Marhaba and welcome to Free Palestine Pod, the podcast. I'm Lama Bazzari.
And I'm Lina Hadi. Each week, we will bring you in-depth commentary from Palestine.
Let's talk Palestine. Marhaba and welcome to Free Palestine Pod. Today on the show, we welcome Giovanni Fassina, founder and director of the European Legal Support Center, the first and only independent organization defending and empowering the Palestinian solidarity movement in Europe and the United Kingdom through legal means. Giovanni oversees the legal team and the strategic litigation work of the organization. Also joining us today is Danah Abueida, a junior legal officer in charge of overseeing cases in Germany for the ELSC. Marhaba, Giovanni and Danah, and welcome to Free Palestine Pod. Let's talk Palestine. Giovanni, can you share with us your background and why did you set up ELSC and establish it within Europe and the UK?
Yes, hi Lama, hi Lina. Thanks very much for inviting us. But first and foremost, I must say that it was not me that probably I established the organization, because the organization has been established by the Palestinian NGO network, which is a network of 200 Palestinian civil society organizations who really felt the need to create a proper organization and structure that could defend advocates of Palestinian rights in Europe in the light of increasing repression they were facing. And they wanted to do it in Europe because they realized that in the United States, there is Palestine Legal, who have been doing an amazing work in protecting activists. And such an organization was missing in Europe. So yeah, we wanted to establish an organization and they recruited me, and here I am. And about myself, I have an activist background. I was always active in the social movement in Italy, and I'm not Palestinian, I'm Italian, but in our circles, international solidarity with Palestine was always a thing, because we always thought that what's happening in Palestine is a paradigm of other form of oppression around the world. And so as anti-fascist, it's a duty to step in and to speak out. That's at a personal level. And that's it in a nutshell.
Thank you. Danah, congratulations on graduating from law school in Maastricht, place that I actually know because I go there once a year for your very famous fair with clients. I noticed that you were also in the Free Palestine Maastricht Advisory Board. And I was wondering, what type of advocating can one do in Maastricht?
Hi, thank you so much for having us. So I was living in Maastricht for around 4 years. Previously, that's where I studied. And that's also where we had our base. I also have an activist background, so we had our base there for organizing for Palestine. Our activities mainly constituted or included protests, panel discussions, lectures, and collaboration with different professors or other activists as well. And recently, our amazing friends there have been organizing a student coalition where every single collective for Palestine all over the Netherlands has banded together and united, and they have been doing amazing work together. Like last year, for example, there was the International Israeli Apartheid Week, where for the entire week, different collectives across the Netherlands hosted events, and we all went to each of them and organized. And it was a huge thing that got a lot of media support, but also backlash as well at the same time. And that's also a time where the ELSC was in direct contact with student collectives before I used to work with them. And yeah, here I am now.
Congratulations.
Danah, you grew up in Gaza. If you can share with us the personal challenges you faced growing up in the Gaza Strip and continue to face while visiting your family who still live there, and the hurdles you face as a Palestinian residing in Germany vis-a-vis your work.
So primarily, I was born and raised in Gaza for a couple of years, for a while. My first time in 10 years was last December, and it was a very visceral experience. It was very intense, but incredibly beautiful to get to know home and see home for the first time, see your family, and also witness or relive the material pains that you know about, that people live through daily there. But also relating to what Giovanni said about why Palestinians, not Palestinians, are in this movement and why the ELSC is also doing the work that we do. in Europe is because the Palestinian cause, in a way, or the Palestinian question really is a focal point or a focal intersection for many different struggles, which is also why the Palestinian struggle extends itself into Europe. For example, my first introduction to the Netherlands was in the municipality in Maastricht, where they wouldn't recognize my passport, they wouldn't take my passport. So they had me sign a different paper with all the information that was on my passport because apparently my Palestinian passport is not okay and they can't trust what's on it. So that was my first welcome to the Fortress of Europe in a way. And since then, you see how Palestinians around us are treated. You see how Palestinian protests are different. You see the double standards in treating Palestinians and other movements for justice, for example. And in Germany, of course, and we can talk about that later when we talk about the context of the ELSC work and the cases that we handle there. But Germany is just an entirely different level of repression and enactments of violence or extensions of violence that is committed against the Palestinian people in very different forms.
Yep. Giovanni, I read a recent article that you published, and in the article you were demanding a call for Palestinian rights in Central Europe. And I was wondering, why do you think that Palestinian activists have so much incredible resistance in Central Europe and are constantly being called out as anti-Semitic and terrorists? Can you explain why the Dutch, the French, the Austrian, and especially the Germans are refusing to criticize the Jewish nation state?
Good question. But first of all, I think that all goes back to the 2015 and 2016, because when Israel established the Israeli Ministry of Strategic Affairs, they start boosting more cooperation, and they start boosting a proper network of lawyers, influencers, NGOs, in order to smear mainly, and in order to create an environment where more and more difficult for people to speak out. Why? Because they realized that from 2008, 2009 until 2014, BDS was becoming really hegemonic. More and more organizations, student unions, and MPs were calling for accountability, were calling for boycotts, were calling for sanction, and this scared them quite a lot. Therefore, on the one side, there has been like a coordinated effort from the Israeli government and many organizations that work in coordination with the Israeli government to do this. And they use different tools, I would say. On the one side, they try to pass a new definition of anti-Semitism, which is the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, which basically conflates anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. And this new definition, which is in theory non-legally binding, is now being adopted by many parliaments, by many institutions. And so through rebranding and redefining anti-Semitism in order to include also anti-Zionism, this is one of the most important tools of censorship on the one side. And then, of course, on the other side, there's been a huge attempt to also repress and target the Palestinian civil society in Palestine. How? Through allegation of support of terrorism. In the last years, many organizations face allegation of support of terrorism, which brought to closure of bank accounts or delay in payments or cut of funding. And this was directed to Europe because they realized that most European governments are funding many civil society organizations, and they're very afraid about what Palestinian civil society organizations are doing, mainly the work of Al-Haq, Adamir, Union Agricultural Workers Committee, and Bizan, DCI Palestine. These are all organizations doing an amazing work, and they've been now designed as terrorist organization. But what's happening now started years ago with this attempt to create a risk surrounding this group. So again, on the one side, there is I would say, Israel attempts. On the other side, though, it's clearly like Europe is a fertile soil for this kind of campaign. And I would say that the rise of far-right groups and far-right governments in Europe testify clearly that there is a connection between these two phenomena, this situation between Israel and in Europe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Danah, can you share with us the challenges ELSC faces and highlight any milestone or key successes within your work?
Perhaps I can share some of our cases in Germany, and I mainly work on German cases, so I can share some of those with you. And then I know Giovanni would like to share some other cases as well. They're quite big and very interesting. But in Germany, I think, for example, or mainly, I think the case of Dr. Anna Esther Yunus, who's a German Palestinian scholar in Berlin, is really emblematic of the use of the IHRA definition that Giovanni was just talking about, and also the wider scale of repression or repressive practices in Germany against Palestinians. So in her case, what happened was around 2 years ago, she was invited to speak at an event, and RIAS, a research institute for anti-Semitism in Berlin, which is also state-funded, compiled a secret dossier on her, compiling all her work, articles that she's published, research, and basically painting her or tainting her as an anti-Semite and a terrorist as well, and disseminated her data onto this party or onto this event that she was supposed to speak at, and she was disinvited the day before. And then from then, what ensued was a series of ostracization, isolation from society on multiple spheres, on all of her spheres as well. And when she found that out, because of course they didn't disclose that as well, she sent a data access request and they refused to provide her with her data, which is a violation of her data access rights as well. And then we raised the case, we brought a case against RIAS, and the case was quite dormant for a while. The data protection authorities in Berlin were not responding, but through push and public campaigns and advocacy work that we do as well at the ELSC, we were able to get a decision faster after some media outlets and articles were talking about the case. And we can really definitely consider it a success in the sense that the DPA, the data protection authorities in Berlin, concurred on the fact that the reasons for which RIAS claimed that they can process her data were unlawful, but we're still appealing because they still allowed them some other grounds. So we just submitted an appeal last week, actually, and we're very hopeful. We're quite confident, inshallah, about the success of the case. And yeah, that's, for example, one case of what's going on in Germany. And I don't know, Giovanni, maybe do you want to mention some cases now or more German cases?
Just another couple. I mean, another good case. It's a case of a journalist from Deutsche Welle, always in Germany. Farah Maraka, especially, is a journalist from Deutsche Welle. In Germany, like some journalists, they went on social media of Arab and Palestinian journalists from Deutsche Welle and start translating from Arabic to German some of their social media posts or articles. They misconstruct them. They frame them as anti-Semitic, and they were all fired immediately on the spot. Actually, even worse, like first they launched an investigation about this carried out by Akbar Mansour, and then they fired them all. Farah decided to challenge this in court, and she won. On the first instance, the judge acknowledged that her dismissal was unlawful. Now Deutsche Welle appealed, but this still is a really important victory because both Farah and Anna proved to be extremely brave in challenging this form of repression in these cases. And just last one, please, if you want me to stop. But we could have a podcast speaking only about successful cases because luckily we've been winning quite a lot, many of them. On our website, on the UK page, for instance, we have dozens of cases we won. But another case for us is really important was, this is not a public case, so I cannot disclose the names, but in the UK, we had a person who was recruited by the public institution. And after obtaining the job, this institution said, withdraw the job offer, claiming that the social media posts were constituting unlawful anti-Semitism, according to the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism that the same organization adopted. We sent them a pre-action letter threatening to sue them for indirect discrimination, violation of freedom of expression. And this institution reoffered the job to this person immediately. And they also paid the salary that this person lost during the months she was not working. So yeah, these are a few ones, but again, we could speak quite a lot because obviously I can say a little bit of pride. Most of the time we win, and also when we don't win, we appeal. And also for us, it's important to build campaign around these cases, so that even if you lose, at least you create more awareness about what is going on, basically.
Wonderful. Those are amazing stats and great cases, and so wonderful to hear that we have places to go in Europe. Giovanni, so I'm sure that you're very well aware that today the Palestinians have become the victims of the European victims, which is exactly the environment within which you were working. How, after 74 years of ethnic cleansing, of lack of basic rights, of a very slow, methodical genocide, how can we get these European countries to understand that we have recreated another monster through the state of Israel?
That's a very challenging question, I must say. But a very challenging question. The answer would involve, I mean, we could answer from the angle of geopolitics, we could answer from the angle of public opinion, I would say. So how we do it? But well, first of all, I believe that the changes start from the bottom. So I really believe that first of all, a public opinion, I mean, a more informed public opinion and more pressure from the public opinion is first and foremost the key, because it's the public opinion that eventually elect people, and it's the public opinion that eventually decide who are the policymakers. And if you want to affect policymakers, then we need to make sure that the public opinion elect the right policymakers and there is enough understanding and awareness about what's going on. So definitely this, in my opinion, is the key. So more mobilization, I would say. And on the one side, I think slowly things are changing here as well, in a sense that the reality of what's happening now in Palestine as which is an apartheid, what Israel is doing is an apartheid, is slowly being completely recognized. Like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, like in law school, if we would have discussed with professor, can we address the situation as an apartheid? I would say, no, absolutely not. This is wrong. This is too complex. And this is in a boring class in law school. Now this is becoming mainstream, and it's already, I think, a step. I would also like to highlight that there is an important initiative which is called European Citizens Initiative, where where basically we're trying to gain 1 million signatures for forcing the European Commission to ban the trade with the settlements, and to avoid that goods coming from settlements are coming to Europe. And also this is an initiative, in my opinion, important, that shows how much public opinion can be mobilized. And this is from the bottom approach. Then, I mean, I would say we leave geopolitics for another call.
Giovanni,
Okay.
I'd like to ask your opinion on how can we increase awareness and pressure on Israel via BDS in Europe, when we're being attacked and censored left, right, and center, when we even mention BDS through different draconian laws that are being implemented?
But first of all, in my opinion, it's important to recall that despite all these attempts, BDS is considered fully legitimate. BDS is absolutely legitimate, is not being outlawed, because sometimes I would say that the Yasbara and the whole narrative aims also to paint the situation, to show the situation, to show that things are going too bad, and again, like, our BDS is unlawful, it is not. So first of all, we need to start drawing some lines, and make clear that this form of political activism are absolutely are possible, basically, and there is more and more support for them. Then again, it comes at individual level, in a sense that I would say that more and more student groups and unions should try to push for boycott, but also be aware that it's possible to push back. This is the most important message. BDS is a legitimate call, which is fundamentally ensuring human rights. And by the way, there is the European Court of Human Rights in 2020 with a leading judgment that stated that BDS is fully protected by the freedom of expression, Article 10 of ACHR. This is important because this judgment is legally binding in all the states of the Council of Europe. And we saw already so many judgments at national level recalling this. I'm stressing this because indeed, in my opinion, it's important to stress this and I really would like to send a positive message in a way and make people really understand that BDS is legitimate, and what we're doing cannot be diminished just by this propaganda tactic and by this kind of smear. It's possible to push back smear. It's absolutely possible, and actually, it's a must, I would add.
I mean, in addition to that, Giovanni, I think part of the impression that people are getting in Central Europe is actually due to the fact that the United States is actually shutting down the boycott, divestment, and sanction movement, to the point that you are literally an outlaw. You are an outlaw in the United States if you promote or work with, or even someone like myself. So I think that that's what's happening within Europe. It's kind of that reputation is flowing on into Central Europe, and the APAC and ADL are pushing that subject very hard in Central Europe today.
I agree, and I see this. And also, indeed, for instance, in the UK, just to add to that, the government is trying to pass an anti-BDS bill. So they're trying to prohibit public bodies to indeed boycott, basically. But yeah, I mean, the situation is not as bad in the US. And by the way, ICLU and Palestine Legal are doing an amazing work and challenging every time this law. Here is a bit more different because it's in Europe, I would say it's more about the smear, I would say. People are afraid to this because they don't want to be tainted somehow. That's my impression. And the IHRA is the main, I would say, tool they're trying to use rather than prohibiting individuals to carry out boycotts. So yeah, again, there are many challenges, but yeah, there are also many ways to push back and fight them, I would say. And this was why we do our work, because we love challenges.
Wonderful. So, Danah, I'm going to address an issue with you. Apparently, under German law, there is a specific law that outlaws flags such as the Nazi flag. And apparently, they are trying to apply that law in an effort to outlaw the Palestinian flag in Germany. And I'm a bit surprised because having read the law, or from what I think a translation of the law, it would appear that if any flag were to be abolished today in Germany, it would actually be the Israeli flag for their nation state Jewish supremacist government. So can you explain, or can you talk about this law, or I'm sure you're aware of it?
In the past couple of years, there has been a lot of pushback against, or really like outright condemnation or prohibition of the raising the Palestinian flag in Germany, and also more particularly like protests, which is also like a fundamental, like the right to assembly is something that has been infringed upon in Germany only when it comes to the Palestinian person, or the Palestinian existence. So for example, in 2021, I reckon there was huge protests because of the aggression going on, and it was incredible. And then the next year, or this year, it coincided with the time Shirin Abu Akleh was murdered, and Berlin police issued a statement online banning the Nakba Day protests, which are held annually in Berlin and are huge as well, and reasoning it by saying we ban it due to the extreme emotionalization of those demographics. That's exactly what they said. So again, something that has no basis or merits in the law, yet is sort of, they just enact those kind of things, and they're sort of above and under the law where you can't really hold them accountable, but that's also what we're trying to do. And this year, for example, when they banned the protests, a couple of people were still on the streets with their kufiyas or some symbol of the flag or the flag itself, and they were arrested. And a few of them were actually hurt and brutalized by the police. And we're also seeing around 70-something cases in this regard right now. So yeah, there's that. But I would just like to mention a point, if you'd allow me, with regards to the Nazi flag, for example, being banned in Germany and so on. I think also relating to the IHRA definition and the climate in Germany, the use of those things, or the adoption of those things as quasi-legal structures is really harmful because it violates the fundamental rights of different people on so many levels. But it really steers away the conversation from anti-racism by completely eroding the Palestinian narrative in favor of a problematic definition of anti-Semitism. And it's incredibly harmful to the global struggle against racism, which I think is also an extension of the Palestinian cause. So yeah, it erodes the conversation completely around global anti-racist struggles and the very just pleas of the Palestinian people. So organizations like RIAS, that were in the case of Dr. Anna Yunus, and many other organizations that do similar work in Germany, not only pose a grave threat to anti-colonial and anti-racist Palestinian voices, but they also really pose a greater danger by rendering serious issues of right-wing extremism in Germany sort of similar to Palestinian solidarity, when the conversation about racism and fascism is surrounding the Palestinian cause instead of surrounding right-wing extremism. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. Giovanni, as a lobbyist, also an attorney, as a lobbyist for the Palestinian cause in the United States and in Central Europe. I have many, many people that ask me on a daily basis for legal advice in Central Europe and in the United States, activists that are being egregiously mistreated. And I'm lucky enough to have Palestine Legal and Dima Khalidi, an amazing team out of Chicago. And I was wondering if I can now start referring some of these wonderful students and activists to you guys.
Yeah, please do. Absolutely. Please do. Just so you know, we have a legal officer in the UK, one in the Netherlands, one in Germany. We have a legal officer who is focusing mainly on supporting Palestinian civil society organization and international NGO who are having issue with the funding, for instance. Yeah, I must say that, we are quite younger organization compared to Palestine Legal. So at the moment, we still cannot afford in-house counsel. So we work with an amazing network of lawyers in each country where we operate. But yeah, please, we are here exactly for this. And we're quite always overloaded with requests, but absolutely, please do, Lina. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank both of you for being with us this evening. We are very much looking forward to hearing your future cases and successes, and we are definitely here to help you in any way, shape, or form that we can, both Lema and myself, throughout the Middle East and Europe and the United States. So we would love to promote your very amazing endeavor and law firm, and help all these Palestinian activists and associations and organizations that are being unfairly treated by basically all of these countries.
No, wonderful. Thank you so much. We will definitely take this opportunity, and we'll definitely be in touch because we have a couple of cases, a couple of campaigns we are planning to launch in January. So yeah, we'll definitely be in touch. But thank you so much for the opportunity to share our work with your audience.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us this week on Free Palestine Pod. Subscribe, like, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts, and follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter.
And be sure to come back next week for a new episode of Free Palestine Pod. Let's talk Palestine.